listening to the Marketing Happy Hour podcast, where we discuss career and industry insights with our peers in marketing.
We're here to talk about it all, like the ups and downs of working in social media,
how to build authentic relationships in the influencer and PR space,
managing a 9-to-5 and a side hustle at the same time,
how to be productive in your life and career without losing your sanity, and more.
Ultimately, we're here to build a community with you because we're all trying to navigate the world of marketing together.
Are you ready? Grab your favorite drink and join your hosts, Cassie and Erica, for this week's episode.
Francesca Murray of One Girl, One World joins us to talk about all things influencer marketing, travel, brand collaborations, and career. If you're a brand tuning in today, you'll be stoked to hear about Francesca's exciting career, but also her advice on building intentional relationships with creators and how to treat creators as a business. Erica and Francesca talk about the recent shifts in the influencer industry, how to price out campaigns, and the value of investing in influencers in combination with paid media strategies. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode, so grab a drink and let's get into it.
Hey, Francesca, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
Doing so well. I followed you for a while on LinkedIn, so I'm super excited to be chatting face to face here. Well, virtually over Zoom. But before we jump in, I do have an important question that we ask all of our guests, and that is, what is in your glass tonight? I guess we're recording this at 1 p.m. my time and like 10 a.m. your time. So what's in your glass right now, or typically in your glass for happy hour?
So at the moment, yes, it's pretty early, so it's definitely coffee. But I will say if it was later in the day, it would probably be Frey Ranch. They make this amazing bourbon whiskey. It's women owned. I actually partnered with them last year, and that's how I discovered it. And it's really good.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. You'll have to share the link afterwards.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I guess we can just jump right in here. We'd love for our Marketing Happy Hour listeners to hear your creator journey up to this point. Have you always been passionate about beauty and travel? And what were your first steps in getting started as a creator in these spaces?
Yeah, so I've always been passionate about both, especially travel. Growing up, I grew up in Los Angeles, and it's very diverse mix of cultures. And I think that's what sparked that initial curiosity. And then when I was 18, we went to visit my grandma's village in Honduras. And it was such a fascinating experience that's what really kicked off my wanderlust. And so I was going into college at the time, and blogs were starting to become a thing. And so in 2011, I started my first travel blog, which was fun. And it was kind of like a way to just share my personal stories with the world. At the time, I was obsessed with Anthony Bourdain and Rick Steves, and they were great. But obviously, their experiences traveling were a lot different from mine. And so I kind of wanted to put like a different narrative out there. And then in 2014, I was like, okay, this is starting to become like an actual thing, an actual industry. Let me, instead of just sharing my diary entries online, make it an actual brand. And so that's when I created One Girl, One World, was in 2014. So I've been doing this for like 10 years. And then,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, and then even One Girl, One World now will be, I think, 9 years old this year, which is crazy.
That is so exciting. I feel like a lot of people got started right at that beginning, at the cusp of like blogs becoming a thing, and now they've seen such success. So it's super fun to hear from someone who's kind of been there from the start. What have been some of the coolest projects that you've been able to work on, or collaborations that you've done so far?
So actually, some of my most exciting projects were with Meta, like as
Ooh.
an influencer. For example, last year they hired me to cover their first Black Creator Day. And a part of that, I had to produce a reel. And it was in collaboration with Jabari Banks and Ollie Show, who are actors on the Fresh Prince reboot. And
Yeah.
it's like a show that I actually watched. So it was pretty crazy to have the opportunity to collaborate with these actors as a content creator,
Oh my
thanks to
goodness.
Meta. And I would say that's like one of the top experiences. And then also in the same year, Meta invited me to be a guest at the Wakanda Forever world premiere, and I walked the red carpet and I saw the
Oh my gosh.
celebrities. So it's been amazing where this has taken me, just to places I completely would have never guessed.
Wow, that is so cool. Yeah, I saw the red carpet photos on your Instagram. That's amazing.
Yeah,
uh,
it was wild.
who would you say then is a dream brand for you to work with? Like, let's manifest here. Who do you want to work with in the future? Give us the inside scoop.
Yeah, so for me, definitely Fenty Beauty.
Yep.
I love the skincare products and the makeup products, so I just think it would be really organic, great fit. And how Rihanna is from Barbados and they use these exotic ingredients. I always love that global twist and approach to beauty. And so I think it would be a great fit if you're anyone who
Yeah.
knows if Fenty is listening, that would be amazing. And then also just any partnerships, honestly, that go deeper than just a sponsored post. So I'd love when brands approach me to host a live stream or do on camera work or write a blog or something like that. So just some deeper partnerships too would be amazing.
So cool. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in 2023 as well. We're recording this right now. We're in January, but I don't think this episode comes out until April. But I think we're just going to see a lot of like live stream shopping, like opportunities for creators and things like that, and more collaborations even within the beauty space on like collections that are curated by influencers and things like that. So that would be really cool to see. Especially melding together like your passion for the beauty and the travel space. I could
Mhm.
see Fenty sending you to Barbados to like talk about the ingredients and kind of hang out
Yes.
there and share the deeper story. So I will be looking out for that for sure.
Yeah,
Uh,
you get it. Yeah. That's yeah.
totally. Would you say that there's a difference between a quote unquote content creator and an influencer? And what is the difference if you think there is one? And what do you consider yourself?
Um, that's such an interesting question because since I've been doing this so long, I've seen it change so much. Like we were bloggers and then influencers and then creators. And I'm like, okay, so what's next?
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what will actually stick in the long run. I personally just tend to follow whatever like the industry is calling us because I have I don't know, I personally just don't get as caught up. I remember when influencer was first like starting to be used, there were a lot of creators or bloggers at the time who were very resistant, like, what does that even mean? And they thought
Right.
it was very shallow. And now everyone's kind of accepted it. And so it's interesting that now creator is being introduced. I would say I'm definitely both. And
Mm-hmm.
I can see the difference with the UGC, the rise of UGC and people who create content and don't necessarily post.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a difference, but I would probably be both.
Sure. Yeah, totally. And there's like blurred lines there too. Like you said, it's kind of whatever people are calling it these days.
Yeah.
But I did recently tune into a webinar and they were talking about the difference between content creator and influencer and kind of talking about how influencers come with their own audience already and then content creators they may have their own audience but for the most part they're outside contracted sources to create content. And so that'll be interesting to see like whether we move into a shift that kind of like separates the two or if it's still going to just be, all in one.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we have to see. Everything's changing all the time with this.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. And now it's so weird to think about that there's full titles within brands that are influencer marketing managers or influencer
Mhm.
marketing and partnerships executives. So crazy to see how fast things change too, because I know a few years ago, those titles didn't even exist within a marketing department. And now we're seeing that so often, which is super cool. And that kind of leads us into working with brands. So a lot of our listeners are on influencer marketing teams internally at major brands. So getting to hear a creator's perspective on working with them is always great. What would you say when fielding cold pitches from brands that want to work with you? What do you look for? What is most important for influencer teams to include in their initial emails when reaching out to potential creators or influencers?
So this sounds probably basic, but using my name is
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how many emails I just don't even respond to on a daily basis because they're just very impersonal. And I mean, I'm also like busy and fielding through all these emails. And so the quicker I've gotten it like almost down to a science, being able to tell what's a serious partnership inquiry versus just like someone fishing for a bunch of creators and seeing who bites. So definitely addressing me by name, even if the rest of the body is like copy paste, that's fine. You don't have to like tailor it specifically to me, but at least saying Francesca, One Girl, One World, something that gives me some kind of indication that you're actually interested in myself as a person and as a creator versus just getting any creator is always appreciated. And then also including everything that the partnership entails. So not just the deliverable of like a reel and stories, but also if there's exclusivity or usage rights, because a lot of times still we'll have the conversation. I'll say, this sounds great. And then you get the contract and it's got like all these additional terms and conditions that either I wouldn't have agreed to or perhaps would have given a different rate for. And then you have to spend more time going back and forth. And I just really appreciate when everything is laid out and we can go from there. And then, of course, it's always great if you can include the budget. I know that that gets tricky, but at the very least, just knowing exactly what it is that you're asking for is always appreciated.
Sure, absolutely. And that kind of like narrows it all down for you, and it's easier for you to like filter through what is a good opportunity versus something that might not be for you. So totally
Mm.
agree with that. How are you currently determining pricing for your content creation services? We know that there's a lot of differing opinions out there when it comes to influencer marketing budgets. Is there anything that you can share to kind of help influencer marketing professionals determine a fair budget for a campaign?
Yeah, so myself and most of the creators I friends with or like colleagues with, I've noticed that it ranges between like 4 to 10% of the overall following as a base. And then of course it will fluctuate with that depending on if it's video, if it's photo, the usage rights,
Mhm.
and things like that. But I would say like a fair expectation is somewhere within that range. And then for myself, I also take into consideration my expertise and my length of time in this industry, as well as education, because I do actually have a degree in public relations and journalism. So, for example, if you engage me in a blog post or even just Instagram sponsored post, the time that I take to write the copy, it's a different
Yeah.
experience probably from a creator who's just out of high school and just kind of doing this for the first time. So I take that into consideration. And then I also consider taxes, which is
Mhm.
something I honestly wish I wish that brands would also consider and that we would talk about more the business
Yeah.
aspect because those taxes are very expensive. I live in California, so we also have state tax, and even just to have an LLC in
Mhm.
California is $800 a year. So it's actually expensive to be a content creator for myself, and I'm actually a small business and not just an influencer. And so I take all those things into consideration personally. But
Yeah.
of course, still try to be fair, and work with people and negotiate and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point that you bring up things like taxes and like having your own LLC and like being this small business versus just like an independent contractor or something along those lines. Like that's so important. I don't think a lot of people think about when they're budgeting for campaigns that it goes beyond just, okay, let's take a certain percentage of the following and that's what we want to work into our budget. Like there's so many other things that go into being a content creator or influencer that
Mhm.
they want you to consider as a brand. So I love that so much.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually say
Yeah.
it for people who can maybe really take that into consideration in the future um because yeah, it's not easy and it's not cheap, and the rate that you give me is like I'm only going to actually get to keep probably like 60 to 70% of what I earn from a campaign.
Absolutely. And then also the same thing with like usage rates and those kind of vary depend on what the usage rights are for, whether that's like,
Mhm.
I don't know, something like a billboard or something like their website. So that's always something that's interesting to hear, especially from a creator's perspective of like, it's a lot more than just I'm going out creating content and I'm going to give you this solid price for just the content that I created. No, it's like all of your expertise, all of these other factors that go into it. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so happy that I have the chance to actually talk
Yeah.
about this.
Yes. Okay. So we kind of talked about pricing and like what's a fair budget and things like that, and what to include in the initial outreach email. But what are some other things that kind of make you want to work with a brand again and again? How would you say influencer marketing professionals or teams can go the extra mile to create lasting relationships with creators like yourself?
So definitely clear and kind communication. It goes a long way. Just really, I guess it kind of even goes back to the initial pitch, like really setting clear expectations. And also when you set really clear expectations, that limits the revisions. Because I also love when there's either one round of revisions or it's something really small, like, oh, can you actually add this hashtag or can you take this out? But then if you're asking me to like, can you redo the voiceover? Can you actually wear red nail polish instead of green, or like little things that could have been clearly communicated? That's when I kind of start to get a bad taste in my mouth. And I think having the degree in PR, I understand that there's another layer. So it's not even always the person that I'm talking to directly who's responsible for all these changes. But if there's a way to either manage the expectations or like just fully understand what the client wants so that I can do my job and like do as minimal revisions as possible, that's something that's really important. I think to a lot of creators too, since a lot of us are usually juggling multiple projects. And then another thing, which I really wish more brands did, is support the content. So, say I do a reel and the comments are great. A lot of times I really wish that like brands would just check what people are saying and like reply to them. Like someone might ask me, "Oh, does this come in another color?" Or, "Oh, are they accepting bookings right now?" or something like that. And I would love to see more engagement from the brand in the content so that to my audience, it can really feel more like a partnership. And then also I'd love when brands repost my content. So for example, if I posted a reel on my feed and then the brand will repost the reel to stories, just for that additional exposure and support, um, that's always appreciated. So really just kind of making it a full partnership beyond our discussions behind the scenes, but also publicly supporting the campaign. I love when brands do that, and I do feel like it doesn't happen often enough.
Yeah, totally. I think that makes everything appear more cohesive and authentic in the long run with people who are viewing that content. If the brand is in there engaging, kind of answering questions that maybe you don't know the answer to, like if it's a beauty product and they're asking specific questions about maybe the ingredients or something, you're like, I don't know, I'll check. But it would be
Yeah.
really cool for the brand to come in and just say, hey, this is the answer to your question. So totally agree with that. That's awesome. Another thing too that I have noticed a lot, and when I've worked on these influencer teams, is kind of nurturing that relationship throughout the year. So even if you're not working on a campaign with the brand in particular, but that brand wants to bring you on in the future or just continue the relationship with you and have a positive experience overall with you. I've seen people send holiday gifts, even just a small little thinking of you flowers or card or anything like that, just throughout the year, on birthdays, on anniversaries, things like that. I used to keep a roster of all the creators and influencers that we worked with, and keep track of their birthdays and just little things that might be fun to surprise and delight them with a little treat. So definitely would offer that advice too. Have you had that experience?
I have, and I always try to remember those brands, even if we may not partner together again that year. I always will have a sweet spot for the brands and the influencer marketers who do things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's not talked about enough. I think it goes beyond just the campaign that you're working on. And I think that's super impactful. What would you say that you see the most conversion with when creating content around a campaign, discount codes or affiliate links?
I would say discount codes because it just drives people to. I think it's more incentive to purchase something, but ultimately, affiliate links through blog posts, especially if there's a discount code, are like gold. And I feel like it's not utilized enough. I don't even get engaged in blog posts enough, but even for example, I worked with Equilibria Women. It's a CBD
Mhm.
company in
Yeah.
2021. And they included a blog post component, and that blog post is ranking like in the top search results on Google for reviews. And
Wow.
so even up until this month, it's still generating subscriptions and sales, and I get a cut still because it's an affiliate link, and then the discount code still works, so the people who subscribe still get a discount. And so that's been one of the most successful as far as like direct ROI and sales partnership, one of the most successful partnerships I've had, because it just keeps giving and giving,
Yeah.
and it costs neither of us anything to just leave the blog post there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. That's one thing that I don't think people factor into like influencer budgets anymore is blog posts because they think, oh, the blog world is dying. But it's totally not. People are always
Uh,
online looking for information, using Google to search for things. And if your post is ranking high on Google, it's going to be something that people click on and eventually look at the discount code and click on that link to buy. So I totally think that's awesome to hear. Just jumping to talking about your experience in the beauty space versus the travel space, do you prefer one over the other? And if so, why?
Um, I don't know if I could say I prefer one over the other just because I'm equally passionate about both. Um, but I will say it's very different. Like travel took a very long time. The travel industry took a very long time to understand the difference between influencers being like a separate entity from earned media.
Hmm.
So a lot of my experience as a travel influencer has been education or being the first to try something or the first to test a campaign, versus beauty feels very established. Like
Sure.
it feels like a very like well-oiled machine, which I love as a creator and just as a business person. Um, so it's very different. Both are very different, but I enjoy both.
Yeah. How would you say you create content differently depending on the industry or product? So, say you have a travel campaign or a beauty campaign, is there a way that you go about each differently?
Yeah, so for beauty, I think one of the things that kind of makes me unique actually is I try to put a travel spin when I can with beauty clients, because I feel like especially when women travel, that's when we want to look our best and feel
Yep.
our best. So I think it's fun to kind of put that spin and give tips based on how to use this product when traveling, or even taking a staycation and making this product a part of the experience. I love doing campaigns like that. And then for travel, it's interesting because selling a destination is just a whole other ballpark from like selling a specific product. And you really, really have to experience a destination to be able to talk about it with any authority, versus a lipstick you can kind of try on once and say, okay, this looks cute. Like you see that right away. So that's those are like the interesting differences. But ultimately, across any type of campaign that I do, I always try to be as relatable as possible. I don't really buy into like trends. Like I'm not a
Mhm.
clean girl one day and then it girl another day, or
Yeah.
like anything like that. Like I try to stay pretty true to myself so that my audience can see that consistency and authenticity no matter what it is that I'm promoting or talking about.
Oh, I love that. Are you working with like tourism boards then on things like travel campaigns, or is it mostly like hotels, like destination marketing agencies?
Um, it at the beginning it was majority tourism boards, and then now that travel is starting to bounce back from the pandemic, I've
Mhm.
had some hotel partnerships too, but the majority when it comes to travel, yeah, it's tourism boards.
That's awesome. That's so interesting. How do you kind of get in touch with them, or are they reaching out to you because you're so established already?
At this point, thankfully, they are more so reaching out to me. But there are all kinds of ways. There are a lot of travel conferences actually. I don't know if how familiar people are with the travel industry as it is, but there are all kinds of travel blogger conferences, travel industry conferences where you're face to face with these tourism board reps, and that's always the best way to get on their radar and to get a partnership.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. I've always been interested in how people are landing, opportunities where they get to travel as part of their, deliverables and things like that. So love to hear that. Just a little tidbit to the side there. But in your opinion, Francesca, what is the value of investing in content creators or influencers versus traditional organic and paid marketing channels like social media?
So I would say it really is that word of mouth. If you find creators that are really respected and trusted by their audience, that just is a different type of relationship than a brand's social media page. I will say though that as a creator, I really like whitelisted campaigns. So I like when there's a paid component to the influencer campaign because it really takes the pressure off of me as a creator because the algorithm just can't be controlled anymore
Right.
or even predicted. So it's just changing all the time. So whenever there's a whitelisting component, then I'm like, great, they're going to get the results that they really need,
Yeah.
regardless of what Instagram decides to do that day. And then I can focus on making the best possible content for my audience and for people who are probably similar to my audience. So I think, yeah, that I would say, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you on other platforms other than Instagram as well? Are you on TikTok and are you doing partnerships on your LinkedIn? I know you have like a pretty good presence there too.
I am on other platforms. I haven't had any partnerships on LinkedIn. I'm actually very curious if that will ever become a
I
thing or if
know.
I don't think I've seen any sponsored LinkedIn content, but I just personally love the platform for
Same.
education and inspiration and networking. Um, but I'm also active on Pinterest, and I will say my biggest campaign last year came from Pinterest.
Oh, wow. Oh,
And
that's
it was
awesome.
with a dream brand. So that kind of surprised me. So I was like, okay, for 2023, definitely going to make that a priority as a part of my strategy.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. And I think maybe one reason for that is probably because brands internally aren't really using Pinterest that much. So having that influencer piece can kind of
Mm.
supplement their internal strategy. That's so cool. I love that. What would you say then if a brand has a small budget to work with? How do you recommend that they utilize that budget? Do you think it's more beneficial to invest in 1 to 2 creators and develop a longer term partnership with them, or kind of spread it out among several for shorter campaign bursts?
I think it depends on what the product is and what the goal is. For example, if it's to announce something new, then I think working with a bunch of different creators is pretty effective because even me, for example, like if a skincare brand is launching something and I see 3 or 4 influencers that I follow talking about it, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, let me see what this
Yeah.
is. But then at the same time, there are also creators that I see work with a brand regularly, and it makes me also curious. Like, for example, Jackie Aina is one of my favorite influencers. And if I see her talking about a brand multiple times, then I think, okay, they're invested in her, she's invested in them. She wouldn't endorse it like this for this long if it
Yeah.
wasn't a good product. Let me get this on my radar.
Oh yeah, that builds trust for sure. But if it is an awareness play, I think I would agree with you on just getting it out to as many people as possible. But having those few longer term partnerships, like you said, people that you're following, they're talking about this brand all the time, you're more inclined to check it out. So I think it's a mix of both, I would say.
Yeah.
Awesome. Shifting gears just a little bit, you have been featured in a lot of online publications. I keep seeing posts all over my LinkedIn of new updates from you. So, what are some PR tips? I know you said you went to school for PR too. So, what are some PR tips for our listeners looking to land placements for their brands?
Yeah, so the most important thing I would say is start building relationships with media now,
Mhm.
not like when you have a launch
Right.
or right before something is coming out. It's really important to get on their radar and actually build a genuine relationship. Even for myself, that's something that I've prioritized over the last few years on Instagram, as opposed to focusing on massive growth. I
Mhm.
really was very intentional about trying to build a specific type of audience. So now I have like journalists, editors, even a few celebrities that follow me just based on the type of content I produce and the way that I engage on the platform. And that's obviously served me very well. And then I will also say, as a bonus tip, is to pay attention to the creators that you work with who have influence off of social media. Because even myself, for example, I've had like dozens of interviews and podcast interview, you name it. Like I'm just really good at like getting press. And
Yeah.
I always try to keep brands in mind that I have a good relationship, like you were saying earlier, who keep me in mind and
Yeah.
who are thoughtful. And I always try to show them love. Like I'm very intentional about remembering certain products, certain brands, certain destinations to have ready to respond to an interview question with. So try not to underestimate those creators that you see actually getting press and walking red carpets, because there's a lot of creators who are out here doing things beyond just posting on social media.
Well, Francesca, thank you so much for just sharing all of your amazing insight today. All of our listeners are just going to be so lucky to hear your perspective on working with brands. But just personally and professionally for you, I just love to know what's next for you. When you're looking ahead, what do you envision for your future as a creator?
So I am in this phase of really using social media more as a tool and a launch pad versus just being the main, I guess, the main course, if you will. So really going to work on building out that editorial piece on my website, producing more articles, and then also personally, I want to do more on camera work. So hosting, I had a few opportunities last year thanks to some of my brand partners, and I really enjoyed it. And so I'm actually taking an improv class
I
to
love
kind of
that.
like build those skills and like flex that muscle so that I'm ready when those opportunities come, because definitely want to do more on camera, hosting branded content, video content. And then also I am trying to pay it forward by doing consultations and coaching for influencers. So I have, even for brands too, or if you work in influencer marketing, I have on my website an opportunity to book a consultation or a pick my brain session. If anything you heard in this podcast was interesting and you want to learn more, please feel free to reach out. And in the more immediate future, so in May, I'm going to be speaking at Women in Travel Summit. It's in Puerto Rico this year, which is very
Oh,
exciting.
wow. That's
Uh,
exciting.
yeah, it's May 19th. And if you're interested in that as well, I do have a promo code. It's Francesca 15, and you'll get a 15% discount. And you can meet me in Puerto Rico.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. We'll put all of the links and everything that you've been chatting about in the show notes so people know where to look. But I would love to hear, do you have any predictions for the future of the influencer creator industry as you're looking ahead?
Wow. It's so I don't even, I study a lot. I read a lot of social media news. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So I think we're going to head into a place where the cream is going to rise to the top. I think there was kind of like a gold rush of creators, especially TikTok kind of broke down those barriers to entry,
Right.
if you will. And so I think moving forward, there'll be more attention, hopefully too, to more attention to actual expertise, actual quality of content, etc. And I think, like we were saying, more opportunities to partner just beyond a social media post. Hopefully having influencers host events or go to expos on behalf of a brand, etc. Things like that, like deeper partnerships.
Oh, I love that. That'll be so interesting to see too. And I think you're right on the nose. I think you're exactly right. Well, we're wrapping up here, but we do love to ask this question on the show. What do you know now that you wish you knew early on in your career as a creator?
I wish I knew that this was a business.
Yeah.
And to get a proper business structure and like taxes and all those things in place, because a lot of times the big lure for creators is going after followers, getting brand deals, making all this money, but it's kind of useless if once you start making this money, like you don't have the right systems in place to
Right.
actually enjoy it properly and not be stressed and all that stuff. So definitely I would start with like start looking at it as a business from the beginning versus playing catch up later.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's something that people don't think about too when they are on the chase to become an influencer, which sounds really weird, but it seems like such, a glamorous life. And you're like going to all these things and creating all these amazing things and getting to do things that you're passionate about. But there really is a deeper level of business to that. And also, I think people who are in the influencer creator space are starting to bring on more team members under them so that they can like manage that business side. But when it's a one woman show, you got to do it all. So
Yeah.
totally agree with you. Well, Francesca, thanks so much for joining us today. Where can everybody find you, follow along with what you're doing on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, everywhere?
Yeah, pretty much everywhere. You can find me on whatever your platform of choice is at One Girl, One World. Also, if you just Google One Girl, One World, definitely my website and like all my socials will come up. So that's the easiest way to find me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This has been really valuable, and I know all our listeners will really enjoy this episode. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Francesca for joining us on today's episode. I took so many notes and specifically pulled out a few takeaways for you to remember. Number 1, make your initial outreach to creators as personal as possible. Number 2, treat creators as a small business and consider the tax and expense implications they're responsible for when engaging in a partnership with you. Number 3, clear and kind communication goes a long way. Provide detailed expectations to a creator at the very beginning of a partnership. And number 4, support creators through the whole partnership process by engaging with the creators' posts and their communities. What did you take away from today's episode? Let us know on LinkedIn at Marketing Happy Hour. Thanks for listening in today, and we'll see you next week.
We are so excited to share that our first ever free Marketing Happy Hour digital resource is now available. Download the Dream Career Game Plan today at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. That's marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. This 5-step workbook will guide you through defining your goals, building your network, diversifying your skills, influencing where you're at, and investing in your growth. Cassie and I created this resource with marketing careers in mind, but the framework can be applied to any industry. Our hope is that this workbook will help you truly elevate your career, whether you're in the market for a new position or just looking to make your mark in your current organization. No matter where this resource finds you, we are cheering you on every step of the way. So go check it out at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie to download and make your career dreams come true.